Alright, so this video is to guide you to conduct a hypothesis test for the population mean. Right, so again, let's just start with the example, right? So we used in class about the car mileage, right? So then we say from this example, we have the population mean is this much, right? And then he randomly select a sample of 85 cars, which is our sample size, right? And then based on these 85 cars, if we have the sample mean, which is x bar, is these many miles, and then sample standard deviation is 2015 miles. All right, okay, and then we are testing about what? We are testing about the mu equals to 12,000 miles or mu larger than 12,000 miles. So from the hypothesis test, we know what? We know it is a right tail hypothesis test. Right? Okay, so now we say we want to A by hand, right? So we need to calculate our test statistics since the population standard deviation is not given. So we have the t test statistics, and then we use the t test statistics to find the corresponding p value to the left, to the right, or in the middle. It depends on what kind of hypothesis do you have, right? So then in this case, we have the right tail hypothesis and how we can use the jump to find the p value or go through this calculation step. All right, so then in this case, we still go to the jump, right? Again, help, again, sample index. All right, so we have already tried two tools. If you still remember, we tried the distribution calculators. We also tried the confidence interval for the mean, right? So now we can use another tool for the hypothesis test, which is called the test mean. Right, so this tool is to test the population mean, right? So then open. So again, you will have the chance to choose you have the raw data or you have the summary statistics. So in this case, we only have the summary statistics, right? So then click OK. Now in this case, in this screen, right, so from the left to the right, we need to choose one by one. The first, what kind of test do you have? You have the Z or T. So then in this case, we have already know that we only know the sample standard deviation. We don't know the population standard deviation, right? So we have the t-test. And then we also need to choose what kind of alternative hypothesis do you have. So what kind of alternative hypothesis? You have the right tail hypothesis, right? So then that will be the population mean is greater than the hypothesized mean. All right. Okay, so then to the right, you also need to input all the information you have. So the hypothesized mean, which is 12,000, right? And sample average, which is the 12,375. Sample standard deviation, 2015, right? And then sample size, which is 85. And our significance level, alpha. When we take the test, we do need to use the alpha to make our conclusions, right? So even though for calculation part we don't need it, but we always know that, so we can just put it here, 0.05, and then enter. All right, so then in this case, you have our test result directly. Right, so first it is called the standard error of the mean. So what is this? In confidence interval, we talked about that, right? So the standard error of the mean is actually this one, right? Which is the s over square root of n, which is 218.56, right? Which is exactly the same with our hand calculation. All right, and then the next one, the t-score, which is 1.716, which is our t-test statistics, right? So you don't need to worry about this calculation by yourself, right? It is already given here, right? Next one is called the t critical values. So even though we don't use these critical values in the hypothesis test, but sometimes some people also use the critical value to compare with the t to make the conclusions, but we don't do that here in this course because it is not always true and it is kind of confusing in some cases. All right, so we will just leave this critical value only in the confidence interval. We want to use the p-value to compare with our significance level so that we can so that we can make the conclusions. All right, so then we say we have the test statistics 1.716. Did I? Okay. So 1.716, and then the corresponding p-value is 0.0449. All right, so compare the p-value with the alpha, you can make the conclusion, right? So then in this case, we have the p-value is less than the significance level alpha, which lead to our conclusion to reject the null hypothesis. Just in case, right, I don't suggest you to forget this part, but just in case in the future you forgot about the rejection rule and you have a option in jump only, right, to reveal the decision, it will just tell you that, okay, in this case, you need to reject the null hypothesis. I don't want you to rely on this option because not every software in the future you use have this option. All right, so in this course, you will still need to remember this rejection rule. Right, if the p-value is less than alpha, you need to reject the null hypothesis. That means we have enough evidence to support the alternative hypothesis. Right, so again, remember, this is our conclusion. Right, rejecting the null hypothesis or do not reject the null hypothesis is not a conclusion to our customers. It only helps us to make a real conclusion. All right, okay. So this is about testing about the population mean. So again, if you have the raw data, you can just choose the raw data option, right? So there's no difference with the conclusions. All right.